chat with Reignover. Here's Zyrene.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm here with Reignover from Immortals, and I got to ask you right out of the gate, TL took their first game off of you guys. Did you expect them to come out swinging and be that powerful?
Like when we play against Team Liquid, I think before we lose, we dropped the game against them. I think we were like 8 win and 0 lose, or maybe 9 win and 0 lose. So like we pretty much have like 100% like win rate against them on stage. So we were like pretty confident. And then even like after the first game, we were pretty confident going on second game. But I think we make some mistake on the draft on the second game, and then we had like communication issue during the game. So we kind of like play not as usual. So I think we just dropped the second game, and then third game we prepare like more IMT style on the draft, and then I think we just get it at the game next.
So what is IMT style by your definition?
Huni on strong top champion, and me playing frontline, I guess. Yeah.
All right, so what's your impression of the TL squad now that they have Fabi? Because this is the first time you're playing them with Fabi in the lineup.
Well, you mean playing against Fabi? How do I feel?
Yeah.
I think he's like incredibly good at like playing some like utility like AD carry, like not like super carry AD carry. Like I think he's playing a lot of Ashe and Jhin, and then his global sense is like wire turtle. He's pretty good at using his ults. And then like we kind of had a hard time like dodging Jin's W. Is it W like stunning you from the far away? Yeah, I think he was pretty good at using that too. So I think Team Liquid style is give less resources to AD carry, but use like utility AD carry to like try to stun or like use global ults, and then he's pretty good at that.
Awesome. And Pobelter yesterday in the interview was talking about how when the game gets really hectic, you guys kind of get dragged down to the other team's level and what the game that they're playing, and it's really skirmish heavy. Why do you think you guys default to that when things get really out of hand?
I think I agree a little bit, but I think it's due to, for example, yesterday, we normally don't play at so late, so we were kind of tired, I guess. And then also like falling into enemies, like a lot of skirmish, like for our team, like every player is like really aggressive, and then they don't want to give even like small things to them. So like if they contest vision, we have to like fight them to slap their vision, you know? So I think it's just due to us being like really aggressive during the game. So like if enemy team is not looking for objective, and if they're looking for kills, then we also like just can't fight them because we have too much confidence to like just win the fight, you know? I think against MV, that's what happened yesterday, I guess. And I think most of the case, I think we try to keep ourselves like controlled and then play around objective instead of kills.
All right, also awesome. Final question here for you, Reignover. You guys have already beaten Cloud9, TL, and also Envy in the second half of the split. Out of the top 5 teams, you only have TSM left, and you don't play them until week 9. So how are you guys going to stay focused playing all these teams that are in the bottom half of the standings when that is the match that I assume you guys are really looking forward to later on in the split?
Yeah, of course. Our only loss was against TSM, and then if we beat TSM, and then hopefully TSM drops some games, so we can have like a match wins and loss, so we can like do like tiebreak, I guess. We're also have to prepare for, of course, prepare hard for other teams, because if you drop one more game, maybe we cannot even do our tiebreak, you know. So we're just gonna prepare like our best to every other teams. I don't think there's big team in any right now, so we just have. Of course, we're gonna put extra prepare against TSM, but I think we're just gonna try hard against every team.
All right, thank you very much, Reignover. Now we're going to throw it back up to the casters to close out that game.
Thank you very much, Zyrene. You can see he was behind us the whole time. Thanks very much for your support on this one. And I know it's magical. Cameras, how do they work? I don't know. It's weird. Spatial awareness. But a great series by Immortals. My vote was that Huni gets player of the game for that one, because it felt like he had done so well on that Hecarim. And
did pretty well.
Yeah, I think he did some good things. and yeah, so Immortals, you heard Reignover talk about it. 11-1 right now in matches. Of course, TSM haven't dropped any right now. And my understanding is, yeah, the tiebreaker first goes to head-to-head, then to game score. And if Immortals even beats them in their series, okay, well, you're 1-1. But then TSM have dropped so few games. That's the hope that, you know, to take the #1 spot, it's not even just as good as beating TSM. You got to get more help from the rest of these teams.
It definitely is going to be difficult for them and for these teams that are in the middle of the pack now. CLG right now is winning versus Envy.
Yeah.
So, you know, any of the middle teams that drop games, you know, people are always wondering, when are the ones in the middle going to turn it around and start their climb back up?
And the battle for the rest of the top 6 is still very tight here in North America. So we're going to go actually backstage side with Zyrene, who is now standing by with Liquid's jungler for another interview.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. I'm here with Dardoch from Team Liquid. I have to ask you, you took your first game win off of Immortals. Of course, it's not the series win, but is that encouraging for you guys moving forward, knowing that you finally did that?
Yeah, it feels pretty good finally beating them for the first time. Maybe it wasn't like an actual win, but it was better than nothing. So like there's progress made. So it's definitely encouraging us more to keep trying harder to improve.
And you've been improving, even though you came in and got Rookie of the Split. Like, we've been seeing your growth both as a leader and as a player. Like, what do you attribute that growth to?
A lot of my growth this split is just because, yeah, Piglet left us. So, well, he didn't leave us, but you know what I mean. Like, Piglet's no longer on the roster, but yeah, he had like pretty big shoes to fill, and I knew Fabi couldn't do that on his own, not at first. So I had a lot of responsibilities when Piglet was off the roster. So it made it necessary for me to sort of mature more and then step into like the leadership role.
And now, because Piglet is off of the roster right now and Fabi is on, what do you think about the current state of Liquid? Because you guys have only dropped 2 series since then, and you've stepped up as a leader.
I think the current state of Liquid is a really strong top 3 team in North America. I don't think anyone besides TSM and Immortals is stronger than us, and I'm looking confidently towards playoffs.
I got a final question for you here, Dardoch. So everybody's talking about that S tier, TSM, Immortals. Is TL also in that S tier? Do you guys think you should be considered there, or do you think you're a step down and still have work to do?
I think we're right below S tier. I think that the top 2 teams definitely are better than us right now, but I think we're inching closer and closer, and soon enough we'll be better.
All right, thank you very much, Dardoch, and better luck next time, I guess. But thank you very much for doing the interview with me. And now we're going to throw it over to the analyst to analyze that series.
I guess we could do that for you, Zyrene.
That's what we do, us analysts. We analyze.
I guess we could do that. I always love when we get an opportunity to hear from both sides after a hard-fought series, because it is interesting to get the perspective of the team that lost and to hear from Dardoch that they very much believe they are that third-place team. We've been having that discussion all day. Who's the third-place team? They very much believe they are. They recognize they still have work to do, and they aren't quite on the level of Immortals or TSM. But that's great to hear, right? To kind of have that perspective and understanding of your relative power level and where you need to go.
Especially after that series, like the mistakes that they made was just like something that's so easily fixable as long as you look at it, identify the problem, and then you just fix it.
Right. I think this was a step forward for them. They took a game, obviously, which is nice. But even the third game was very competitive.
Very much so.
And it was really coming down to the teamwork that Immortals has being a step ahead. But I think he's right in saying, Dardoch's right in saying that they've cemented themselves as the third-place team for me. Unless C9 starts really stepping it up, where they've been struggling recently.
They'd have to, right?
You're right. So I think at this point it is becoming more apparent that it is TL almost uncontested for that third spot.
All right, let's get into this third game here. Starting in Champion Select, we see the Hecarim picked up, but it goes to Huni this time. I mean, he's no slouch on that champion. He's obviously very familiar from all of its play during the last season, last year. But it's been away from the top lane for a little bit. He makes the return. Rek'Sai still going over to Reignover, and an immense amount of focus onto Lorlo between those two individuals on Immortals.
I feel like Lorlo played it perfectly, but the little problem I was talking about earlier is just having vision there and having Dardoch to either back him up or Phoenix teleporting early. Because what happened was it was a 1-for-1. There's a huge wave, and then Lorlo's just dead while Huni dies, but there's a huge wave there, and then Phoenix picks up all that farm, and Lorlo is just like, oh, I'm on welfare now.
Right, we saw a 2-level disadvantage. I will return to that point. I want to return to that point, but I want to hit our first replay, which is 5:30 into the game. This is a 2-for-0 for Team Liquid, and it was very intriguing because in the lane swap, we saw Team Liquid get double executed and not secure this turret, but it effectively
They set him up.
Immortals.
They set him up
It
for
was,
us.
it was all planned to double execute into the trap.
I mean, it is a false sense of security that turret gives, and Immortals wasn't really just thinking like, well, what if they just hit the turret instead on the dive instead of hitting us, and then there's no turret. So it's not even really a dive, it's just you guys are extended in a long lane, basically, which is not how it feels when you see that turret behind you, you think you're good.
But it was an interesting thing, just only because not 30 seconds to a minute earlier, we were like, oh no, like Team Liquid is at such a disadvantage. That's that global gold wasn't in their pockets. If they don't get that 1.5K gold lead pretty early, that early into the game is pretty astronomical. but they recognize what they can make out of that and they execute on it.
For me, I'd be worried saying that we're the third place team and our bottom lane gets executed by the tower, but maybe it's their secret plan
That's the thing,
to
right?
become the third place team by setting it up for the 2-minute format dive.
Exactly. I mean, as a third place team, right, they got to do something differently than the first and the second place teams in order to claw into those spots. So they're just experimenting. They're looking for new things to do. No, either way, I thought ultimately it was just a cool adaptation to what was an earlier mistake. They end up getting a couple kills out of it. That's great to see the recovery, because I think a lot of teams would be like, oh no, we didn't get the turret. I guess we're just going to have to suffer through the early game a K and a half down. We'll try and make that up later. Liquid finds a way to do it pretty much immediately. Now I want to push forward to that top lane dive that you're talking about, Dyrus, the 1-for-1, because we have this to play out. As you mentioned, the wave crashes in. Huni's level 7 to Lorlo's level 5. As also, though, too, Lorlo playing it as about as perfectly as he can. It's just not quite enough, and he's going to lose so much farm to this turret.
Right, he's able to dance away from so many abilities, away from damage as well, getting out of the Hecarim ult, not taking any damage there, and just that's really what highlights to me the difference between these two teams is like Dardoch was in that area prior to the wave crashing, but he had finished farming all his camps. He handed blue buff off and his red buff and all his bot side camps are up, and so he's like, all right, I'll go there. And it just, the wave's right there. It feels really bad to do as a jungler to just sit there and babysit your top laner, but you can see what happens. Because if Lorlo was just 6 there, that dive can't happen. He'd be regenning off the wave, he'd be ulting, he'd be dashing all over the place. But with how it happens, he just can't do anything. And it's not like he was mechanically outplayed by Huni. It was the pressure that Reignover brought that Dardoch didn't cover.
And it just got tougher and tougher from that point onward, right? You're already down 2 levels as the viewers from the Team Liquid, or rather the CLG versus Envy stream are joining us. CLG coming out victorious 2-0 in that one. So good on them there. They're going to be happy having taken down one of our top teams. Maybe this is the start of their comeback, their rise up in the standings, moving towards playoffs. While you guys join us, we've been talking about this Immortals victory over Team Liquid in a hard-fought 3-game series, picking up the 3rd game after a very back-and-forth, kind of scenario. We're going to dive back into this, continue talking about it, just because it was so many intriguing things happened, right? Lorlo's now down an insane amount of XP as well as gold. We saw at one point about 3 to 4K gold difference just in that lane alone. It made it so tough for him to operate the remainder of the game, always having to fear that 1v1.
Yeah, Huni's the kind of player where when he's ahead, he stays ahead, and it's really depressing as a top laner to go up against that. And honestly, when you look back at your mistakes, the biggest thing you got to look at is, did I communicate to my jungler that I think of this possibility? And it's a really, really hard thing to do, but it's what you got to do.
Yeah, I think that's really what it comes down to is when Huni's on a carry versus carry matchup, he will not let himself fall behind, whereas sometimes it seems to happen to everyone he's against, where they might not get the pressure they need. We don't know on the outside, is the top laner communicating, I can't afford to lose this wave in this matchup, because it's not like you're playing a tank where, I'll fall behind, but I'll tank up later, I'll CC some people. And Aurelia kind of needs to be relevant gold-wise, and falling behind like that is not an option.
But that sentiment that you're talking about with Huni is very relevant to our player of the game, as he is going to receive player of the game honors. This was contentious, though. There were votes for both Reignover and Huni, so this one split decision, not unanimous, and a lot of that comes from the fact, do you attribute Huni's success to Reignover's ganking and his attention to that lane? But without knowing the communication between the two players, we can't assume who's either calling for it and who's acting on it. So it's kind of a tough scenario in terms of awarding player of the game, but ultimately he's going to get it because he performed with the lead once he had it.
Right. I'd honestly be fine with giving it to either of them, where Reignover is kind of like, having Huni piggyback onto him for a bit, and then Huni just goes off on his own.
Right, I mean, the ultimate assassinations he had on Fabi were really kind of what sealed the deal. It was still like a 3K gold lead going back and forth, and there was that one kind of near the top side around the Raptor camp, and just getting that one flank off really kind of sealed the deal. And it was ultimately off the back of Reignover's great pathing early and making sure that Huni isn't just letting Lorlo catch this huge wave and even out the matchup, he's staying ahead.
All right, well, that's going to do it for the Immortals versus Team Liquid series. Immortals cementing themselves as a top 2 team here against Team Liquid, but Liquid looking strong and definitely, as Dardoch said, looking confidently towards playoffs. We've got a couple weeks to go, and maybe they'll be able to take some more games off TSM or Immortals when we get there. Now, though, let's turn our attention to this CLG versus Envy matchup, in which CLG 2-0s Envy. So, interesting because Envy had such a great start to the split. They stumble for a bit, maybe they return for a second. This team, I'm having a tougher and tougher time as the split goes on, identifying how good this team is because they keep playing with my heartstrings. And then on the side of CLG, we had such high expectations. Those went out the window, but here they are now finally taking a series off a team that's above them in the standings. You know, that's exciting.
Right, but it was such a sloppy series, and especially game 2 that just ended. It was so back and forth, and there were a number of, like, CLG got a huge lead early, and then they failed trying to 4-1. Dardoch couldn't get anything done, and it was just kind of insanity the whole way through.
Yeah, I feel like they just crawled back.
Yeah,
into
right. Yeah,
that,
it's
you know?
it's not like they're
it didn't feel
throwing the
good.
doors open, saying "I have arrived." Right? It's very much they're kind of like stumbling back into their
Baby
position.
steps,
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. Very much baby steps. But if we get into the gameplay itself, 14 minutes in, CLG's going to pick up a 4-0 around the Rift Herald. But a lot of this is coming off the back end of Envy dedicating 5 of their members to a Rift Herald this early on in the game and paying dearly for it.
Right, I mean, right before this, Envy had actually killed a couple of CLG members. They took the mid turret and they transitioned up here, but it's just such an overextension and staying that they just get pinned up in this pit, and CLG basically just traps them in there, murders them. They have the Fiora ult healing all of them, who he's barely going to be able to live off on the side, and it's basically a catastrophe. When you see a situation like this, you generally think, okay, the game's over, barring any big mistakes. It should be, you know, fairly controlled from there. I mean, CLG got 5 dragons by the end of the day, but control was the opposite of what this was.
Well, exactly, that's what I was gonna say. You put a key word in there. As long as we control and we don't make mistakes, after you get 4 kills for 0 at 14 minutes, most teams would be like, we should be able to win this game. We have all the tools to do it. And yet, it was not an easy task for them, Dyrus.
It's one of those things that where Rift Herald is good, but not that good.
Right,
we don't need 5 people to do it. We have that big eye with the true damage for a reason.
You need two-ish.
Yeah, diversify. Spread out, guys. Spread out. Spread the map. No, but they do pick up those 4 kills there. That is, of course, very helpful in their victory, but the series the game rather, continued to go back and forth. As you can see, a 47-minute game, so very extended. And this is where, if we are going to throw any criticism at CLG, it would come in sometimes that maybe their impatience in the split push, particularly from Darshan, it seemed, uncharacteristically playing that 4-1 split incorrectly at times when he's most of the time the person that we laud for his ability to split.
It seemed to me like his idea of the 4-1 was like solo kill him and then take stuff. And there's even a time where he just like sat into the turret and was like, fine, I'll kill the turret. It didn't seem like he was willing to like move around at all, like once he has pressure to do something else. And especially there was one time where coming out of that pause, they got a kill. And instead of just going mid and getting that wave pushing so that after CLG's done chasing up the top side, they can swing mid and meet up and maybe end the game, he dies under the turret 1v1 to the Trundle, like finishing off the turret, and then Trundle just TPs and takes the inhib, and it results in a really wonky game state as opposed to CLG extending the lead.
I'm giving Darshan the benefit of the doubt. The only thing I can think of for his reasoning is that maybe he thought that they could never 5-on-5 and that he's just so hell-bent on like, I'm going to split push, I'm going to split push, I'm going to split push.
Right.
That's the only thing in my vocabulary.
Yeah, no, you have to assume that, because even at the end of the game, and we could actually play the winning game fight, or the winning team fight rather now, but at the end of the game, he's still on the bottom side of the map. Both inhibs are down over there, and he's still trying to create this pressure that the super minions will do on their own, in a way.
Right, and until that Afro flash play onto Laud and the follow-up by Stixxay, it really felt like they were struggling. I mean, it is a pretty annoying comp with like the protect the Caitlyn with the Lulu.
5 traps that you have to walk through.
But there was a point where the traps were down, and you think Darshan can let the super creeps kind of go on their own, swing topside to pressure the Caitlyn away from the traps, so that way your Rek'Sai can eat them all freely, and she can't punish with her longer range auto attacks from there. But he just stayed bottom the whole time.
Yeah, so some questionable decisions out of him as an individual. I now want to turn our attention towards Envy, just because we haven't spoken too much about them. Even in this loss, they did put up a good fight, right? Again, if you look at the inverse of what we were talking about, 4 kills going over at 14 minutes should spell disaster. They did hold it out for quite some time, but I have to turn a critical eye towards this Lulu in the mid lane, because this champion wasn't getting played anyway, and then we put in some changes that make her more support-oriented, still picked up in the mid lane.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't much mid lane focus this game, because a lot of it was like there was a kill mid that Envy got, and then they threw at the Rift Herald, and by that point, you're not really looking at like the 1v1 matchup anymore, and it just didn't seem like it was very high impact. Obviously, with the Karma taken away, I think that I would rather have ran that comp with the Karma.
Yeah.
But we're still determined to play that comp. So maybe that was a little of Envy's decision making.
I'm thinking that honestly, like you said, the focus of mid wasn't really there. I feel like the Lulu, if they didn't make that mistake at Rift Herald, and they just like kept slowly sieging like they did towards the end of the game when, well, first CLG threw at mid, and then Envy went down mid, got mid, went top.
Yeah.
Aphromoo saved the game. Then the game turns, and it's just back and forth. And the Lulu actually made it to where it felt like Envy had the stronger team fight because Caitlyn could just run around, auto attack, like all that damage being done. Even when CLG was pushing to win the game, the trap stopped them. You have the Lulu shields, and Laud was putting out a lot of damage, but it just wasn't enough.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, I think it was proven that Lulu with an ADC can still be very effective, if not more effective, because of the changes that were put in. It's just that the damage on her own isn't quite there, because you're not getting that Q pass-through. So having that kind of secondary threat that a 6-item Lulu could be at times back in the day with a Lichbane proc, not quite there anymore. I got to push us along to player of the game, going to Aphromoo this time around, 1, 2, and 11 on that thresh. You just mentioned he saved the game. That in and of itself is probably enough to get player of the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely, he had 2 player of the game kind of plays. One was saving the game near that top inhib on CLG side, and then he kind of won the game for his team. Later, once again, top inhib, but this time on the other team side.
Yeah, I mean, that guy always impresses. His thresh, quite good. You'd probably put it right behind Bunny Fufu's, but very stellar play out of him. That's going to do it for the day in terms of games, so let's get a look at how the league stands following the completion of our Saturday matches. TSM and Immortals remain in first and second place. Cloud9 and Liquid are in a tie for third place. Envy stands alone in fifth, and just below them is CLG and Apex, followed by the bottom 3 teams, Energy, Phoenix One, and Echo Fox. Now for a look at the games in the store for you tomorrow on both streams. Hit up NALCS 1 for Apex versus TSM and Energy versus Cloud9. Meanwhile, in the Battle Theater, NALCS 2 will host a match between CLG and Phoenix One, with Liquid's match against Echo Fox after that. Gentlemen, looking at these games, ones that you're excited for above the rest, looking for a team to make a surge starting tomorrow?
I think for me, I was mentioning earlier in the day, Phoenix One versus CLG. I do expect CLG to win that series, and so what I'm looking for more is to see the improvement out of Phoenix One. We said that coming into the second half of the split, it's basically the start to their season. We had heard that previously out of Echo Fox last split, and they actually did pretty well in the second half. So I think this is the kind of thing where we want to see just how far P1 can push it. Maybe not win, but if they look really good against CLG, that's a bright spot still for me.
I actually had a different opinion, but after watching today's games with P1 and CLG, my opinion has changed a lot. So I'm actually looking forward to seeing if CLG can actually crawl their way back, because I gave them a lot of benefit of the doubt, but then after watching the game, I'm not too sure. And P1 looked like they were getting their stuff together, so it would be interesting if they could actually apply that against a better team.
All right, we're looking for cleanliness out of CLG. We're looking for continued improvement out of Phoenix One in those series tomorrow. Now, earlier in the broadcast, we asked you to hit us up on Twitter with photos showing your team spirit. Now, some of you answered the call, and we selected a couple to show on air. I'm going to ask you, gentlemen, to scoot to the side just as they come up behind me. First up, Eric Reina. Yeah, I got to get out of here. Now, first up, Eric Reina tells us there is no rivalry for him. He's the most passionate fan of all and supports all of the big names, TSM, Immortals, CLG, and Cloud9. That's a lot of indecision, though.
Yeah,
right?
that's just fanboying. You just swap out based off the #1 team. Come on.
No. But no. See, he supports TSM the most because he's wearing the largest article of clothing for them. I think. Okay. That's how I would interpret this. He's a big TSM fan. He'll hop on the CLG bandwagon behind that, and then Immortals and Cloud9.
Where's Team Liquid, man?
I'm not sure if I should call this bandwagoning, or I'm not too sure. Kind of.
Yeah, Dyrus, are you allowed to be a CLG and TSM fan? Is that even like?
I mean, whatever floats your boat, man. I guess we can just say you support NA.
There you go.
He supports good esports.
That's what it is. Yeah. NA. There it is. All right. Well, with a very patriotic message next up, Thunder Nuggets tweeted out, "Lock in USA, USA, USA." Let's take a look at the Star Spangled C9 swag. Boom. There it is. Oh, what an outfit, man. I love that. The full American flag tank top, shorts, and socks, and then of course just the C9 pullover to pull it all together.
Is that C9 a C9 fan or a Mango fan?
Yeah, I was about to say that just looks like Mango to me, man.
There you
just
go.
without the beard, obviously. and
Right,
a
yeah,
little younger.
missing a little bit of that.
Evo belts.
Well, that's going to do it for our Saturday broadcast. So head over to LOL Esports, or rather, head over to facebook.com/LOL Esports if you want to catch a live Q&A with myself, Mark, and Iris. We'll get that started in just about 5 minutes, so get your questions ready, and we'll see you guys soon. Now, for myself, the casters, the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow, or in 5 minutes.